Welcome back to the channel. And tonight, I need you to do one thing before we begin. Don't turn around, because the stories you're about to hear aren't just tales. They're the kind of mysteries that stay with you long after the video ends. The kind that make you check the corners of your room. The kind that make you wonder if you're really alone, or if something has been quietly watching you this whole time. From unexplained disappearances to strange figures caught just for a second on camera, from footprints that appear on empty beaches to shadows that move even when the wind is still. Each story in today's video comes from real people who swear what they saw wasn't human. So if you're here for comfort, you're in the wrong place. But if you're here for the truth behind the fear, then get comfortable, turn off the lights, and let your curiosity take over. Because once we start, there's no going back. This is your final warning. Watch at your own risk. Story 1. The School We Never Should Have Entered. I haven't talked about this night in years, mostly because every time I think about it, my stomach tightens. Back when my friends and I were teenagers in New Jersey, we were obsessed with urban exploring. Abandoned warehouses, broken down factories, empty hospitals, anything silent, rotting, and forgotten. Usually it was all harmless fun. Creepy? Sure. Dangerous? Definitely. But nothing we ever saw really stuck with us until the night we visited the abandoned middle school. There were 4 of us. Me, Frank, Yuri, and Freddie. We'd seen pictures of the school online, a massive building left to rot after budget cuts. It was a last-minute plan, like most dumb teenage decisions. Yuri drove. We parked 2 blocks away and walked up the dark street until the school came into view, towering over the empty neighborhood like a dead giant. The fence had been cut open, which saved us from climbing. One by one, we stepped inside, our flashlights slicing through the thick, dusty darkness. The place felt wrong from the moment we entered. It wasn't just abandoned, it felt swallowed, like the building had inhaled all sound. The hallways were stripped down to wires and crumbling tile. Insulation hung from the ceiling like gray spider webs. Every step echoed in a way that made me feel like something else was walking just a second behind us. We explored the basement first, which in hindsight was stupid. The further down we went, the more rotten the air felt. One of the rooms had a giant pentagram painted on the floor, dried and cracked like it had been there for years. We joked about it, but none of us wanted to stay long. Even Freddie, usually fearless, stayed close. Once we climbed back upstairs, Frank and I found a classroom with a clean white wall, rare in a place torn apart by time. Frank wanted to paint something, so we pulled out the cans. Yuri and Freddie told us they'd go look for the roof access. Their footsteps faded down a dark hallway, and then it was silent again. After a few minutes, Frank yelled my name. He was angry, accusing me of hiding his bag. I told him I hadn't even stepped inside the room. When we searched, the bag was gone, completely gone. And this wasn't a big room. There was nowhere to hide it. We assumed Freddie was messing with us, so we went looking for the others. That's when things started feeling wrong. We wandered up and down hallways that looked identical. Every classroom seemed darker than the last. Eventually, I stepped into a small side room and froze. On the wall was a freshly painted pentagram. Still dripping, right beneath it was Frank's missing bag. Frank ran in behind me, cursed loudly, grabbed his stuff, and stormed out. I didn't even want to speak. Something about the room felt violated. Not a prank, not something a friend would do. Before we could discuss any of it, footsteps pounded towards us. Yuri and Freddie rounded the corner, eyes wide, breathless, telling us to run. We didn't hesitate. Yuri tried to explain while we sprinted, but between the echoes and our panic, I only caught pieces. 3 people, cloaks, sitting in a circle. They saw us. We kept turning, blindly through hallways that felt like they were multiplying. Every time we thought we recognized a room, it led into another identical corridor. At one point, we stopped to catch our breath, and that's when we heard it. A slow, sharp, hissing sound from further down the hallway. Not a pipe, not an animal, a person. Then a voice came out of the dark. "I should have cut you when I had the chance." We ran, harder than before. This time I could hear footsteps behind us, multiple people chasing us, yelling things I won't repeat, promising things I didn't want to believe. Somehow, by pure luck, Yuri found the same entrance we came through. We sprinted across the yard, through the cut fence, into the car. Only when the school disappeared behind us did we start breathing normally again. On the drive home, Freddie told us everything. He and Yuri had gone downstairs looking for us. They heard metallic clinking coming from a room and thought it was us messing around. But when they entered, they saw 3 cloaked figures sitting in a circle, hunched over something on the floor. The second the figures noticed them, they jumped up and started chasing us. Freddie thinks they planned to trap us upstairs. Yuri thinks the fresh pentagram room was meant for something worse. I don't know what to think, except that we were unbelievably lucky. And the school? Still standing, still abandoned, and I still wonder what would have happened if Yuri hadn't found that exit. Story 2. The Man Who Came Back Twice. I moved into that house because I thought I wanted peace. After years of living downtown, with neighbors arguing through thin apartment walls and traffic roaring until sunrise, I craved silence. What I got was something else entirely. The house I rented sat on the outskirts of a small rural town. 1 floor, 2 bedrooms, outdated everything, but quiet. That first night, I remember thinking the silence felt heavy, like even the wind avoided the place. I brushed it off. I was tired, stressed, and just trying to settle in. A few weeks later, after a long shift at my new job, I got home around 9:45 p.m. I ordered Chinese food from the only place willing to deliver that far. Maybe 15 minutes later, the doorbell rang. Too fast. I looked through the peephole and saw a man in a hoodie. No food bag, no receipt, no car lights behind him. At first, I was too tired to think straight. I cracked the door open with the chain still on and asked if he had my order. He paused, not confused, but as if deciding what to say, and then mumbled something about checking the food in his car. That's when my brain finally woke up. I told him I wouldn't open the door unless he had the food in his hands. He didn't argue. He just turned and walked into the darkness. I called the restaurant. The manager told me the delivery driver hadn't even left yet. My skin crawled. I called the non-emergency police line. They logged it, but didn't send anyone. After all, nothing technically happened. 20 minutes later, the real delivery driver showed up. Normal guy, normal exchange. I ate, tried to relax, and eventually ended up half watching TV with the lights off. Around 11:30, I heard it. A soft scraping at the back door. I muted the TV and listened, frozen. The scraping continued. Then the doorknob jiggled. Someone was testing it. I dialed 911 with shaking hands. The operator kept me on the line until police arrived. I locked myself in the bedroom, gripping a kitchen knife like it was going to do anything. When officers searched the property, they didn't find anyone, but they found pry marks near the back door. Fresh ones. Someone had tried to wedge something under the lock. I didn't sleep that night, or much the night after. I kept telling myself the police presence scared him away. 2 days later, I woke up at around midnight to the sound of sirens passing my house. I checked outside and saw 3 cruisers speeding down the road. My first thought was relief that it had nothing to do with me. 20 minutes later, knocking. My stomach dropped. I looked through the peephole and saw 2 uniformed officers. When I opened the door, one held up his phone and asked, "Do you recognize this man?" I did. Immediately. The man in the hoodie. The one from the other night. The one who tried to break into my house. They told me he'd been caught trying to break into another home nearby, and that based on my earlier report, they suspected he'd returned to my house later that same night to try again. He was in custody now. I wouldn't have to worry. But the thing is, he came back twice. Once pretending to be a delivery driver, once creeping up to my back door after midnight, and I still don't know what he wanted. I moved out a month later. The silence in that house never felt peaceful again.
Story 3. The Drinks They Didn't Want to Drink. My name's Catherine, and I'm a law student at NYU. First year was brutal. I barely slept, lived off caffeine, and genuinely questioned every decision that led me to law school. By summer, I promised myself I'd actually enjoy life again. That meant going out with friends, especially my best friend Jackie. One Saturday, we ended up at a bar we knew well, packed, loud, the kind of place where every conversation feels half-shouted. 2 guys slid into conversation with us, Sebastian and Luke. Charming enough, funny enough, nothing about them seemed off at first. Jackie normally has a radar for guys with red flags, but she actually liked Luke, so I gave Sebastian a chance. We talked longer than usual. Long enough for Jackie to be the one to whisper that she needed the bathroom, not me. Before we stepped away, the guys offered to buy us drinks. We asked for rum and cokes. Simple, hard to mess up. In the bathroom, Jackie confessed she was actually thinking about going home with Luke. This shocked me, because between the 2 of us, I'm the one known for impulsive choices, not her. But she insisted he seemed different. I shrugged and told her I'd support her either way. When we walked back, everything felt off. The guys weren't joking around anymore. They were whispering, standing stiff, almost like they'd been caught doing something they shouldn't. But the moment we got close, they snapped right back into the flirty, casual vibe. Luke pushed 2 rum and cokes towards us, and next to them 2 bright yellow frozen drinks. I frowned. Guys don't usually order pina colada slushes at crowded bars, not for themselves. I pointed at the slushies and asked, "What's this?" Sebastian smiled too quickly. "Pina coladas." I exchanged a glance with Jackie. Something wasn't right. It was too obvious, almost lazy. So I acted dumber than I am, which I'm good at doing. "Oh my god, you guys drink these? They're kinda girly," I teased, giving a playful, harmless laugh. Before they could respond, I slid the rum and cokes toward them and pulled the slushies toward me and Jackie. Sebastian stared at me, not annoyed, calculating, like he was trying to read my mind. A full second passed before he gave a tight smile and said, "Touché." He lifted the rum and coke and drank. Luke followed. Jackie was visibly confused, but she trusted me enough to sip the slushie I'd shoved into her hand. We finished the drinks. The guys didn't say a word about the switch. Jackie kept making it painfully obvious she wanted to leave with Luke. Eventually, Luke suggested we all go back to his place for one more drink. At first, I felt relieved if they were willing to let us into their apartment. Maybe there was no real danger. Maybe I was overthinking everything. Maybe I was paranoid from too many true crime podcasts. But when we got into the Uber, Sebastian barely spoke. Luke stared out the window. Jackie whispered to me, "Are you sure about this?" And suddenly, I wasn't. Luke's apartment was on the second floor of a small building. Clean. Minimal. Too minimal. No decorations, no photos, bare walls, bare shelves. A couch, a table. Nothing personal. Nothing lived in.
Story 4. The classroom beneath the grounds. I always hated school. Ever since I was little, the idea of sitting in a room full of loud, annoying kids for hours felt like torture. Teachers telling you things you'd never actually use, bullies waiting around every corner, it just wasn't for me. By middle school, I'd perfected the art of skipping. I'd sneak out, cut through the dirt path behind the playground, and disappear into the woods with a couple of other kids who hated school as much as I did. By high school, my grades were so bad my parents gave up and shipped me off to a fancy, disciplined boarding school. Their words, not mine. They thought new walls and strict rules would magically fix me. Spoiler, they didn't. Within a week, I found a new crew. Kids who'd already figured out every blind spot on campus. We ditched video games and traded them for cigarettes, meeting up in a secret spot behind the tool shed, right on the edge of school property. Nobody ever came there, except sometimes someone did. That someone was Mr. Friedman, the school groundskeeper. He wasn't a janitor, at least that's what he always said. But he did all the mopping, sweeping, and fixing, and nobody knew the school better than he did. He walked with a limp, smelled like wet leather, and muttered to himself as he worked. Students avoided him like a disease. If you turned a corner and saw him, you turned right back around. He had caught us smoking more than once. He never snitched. He'd just stare at us for a second longer than normal, then limp away. Somehow, that made him even creepier. One afternoon, as we were messing around near our spot, we heard it. A deep, wet sound echoing from the trees. Then a sickening squeal, like an animal being butchered alive. "What the hell is that?" I whispered. Frankie shrugged. Zach told me to pass the lighter. But nobody was really smiling anymore. We followed the sound to a clearing near the old storage shack, the one everyone said Mr. Friedman lived in. The place looked like it would collapse if you breathed too hard. "We should turn back," Frankie muttered. "I've got a bad feeling." "When's the last time anything interesting happened?" I asked, and pushed the door open. It creaked like something in a horror movie, a warning we completely ignored. Inside, right past the entrance, a staircase led straight down into darkness. I flicked my lighter on. The flames showed a narrow hallway leading to a basement room. And then we saw it. About a dozen chairs, a chalkboard, a fake classroom set up underground, and in every seat sat a dead pig, each one dressed neatly in our school's uniforms. Some were missing legs, some had dried blood around their snouts. All of them were slumped forward like they were waiting for class to begin. I gagged. Frankie collapsed to the floor, throwing up. Everything in my brain screamed, "Run." But before we could escape, someone stepped into the doorway upstairs. A tall, crooked silhouette. The limp gave it away immediately. Mr. Friedman?" I whispered. He began descending the stairs slowly, one hand dragging along the wall, the other gripping a long butcher's knife. "Well now, how did you boys find your way down here?" We got lost," I stammered. "We're leaving. We won't say anything." He stared at us through the dim light. Then he smiled. Or at least he tried to. "Lost," he repeated. "I suppose I can let that slide. just this once." I exhaled in relief until Frankie, in a panic, grabbed a wooden plank and swung it at him. Mr. Friedman caught it mid-swing, shoved Frankie so hard he hit the wall, then lifted the plank again. I did something I'm still ashamed of. I ran. I bolted up the stairs, tripped, smashed my head, and everything went black. When I woke, I was in the school clinic. A note sat beside me. "Stay quiet. Stay safe." I haven't seen Frankie in days. He's officially missing and police have been searching the woods, but every time I walk down the hallway, I feel eyes on me. And when I turn, Mr. Friedman is always there, watching, waiting.
Story 5. The Girl with the Borrowed Face. It was a normal summer morning when everything started. Our history teacher had called in sick, and a free period is basically a holiday when you're a student. My friends and I headed straight to the gym to play basketball. Marcus passed me the ball. "Go for it, Chad." I scored. Our friend group cheered, and in my excitement, I threw the ball randomly behind me. It hit someone sitting on the bleachers. A student in a hoodie. "I'm so sorry," I said, and jogged over. "Didn't mean that." The student lifted her head slightly. "It's okay. I'm Gina." A girl. Great. Now I felt even worse. Before I could say much, Marcus yelled for me to get back to the game, so I told her I'd see her around and ran off. Marcus, being the flirt he always was, immediately decided he wanted to talk to her. He walked up to her with his usual stupid pickup lines. She didn't react. Then she stood, pulled down her hood, and Marcus screamed. The left side of her face was covered in thick black stitches, like someone had roughly sewn it back on. She smiled at Marcus with an eerie calm. "Still think I'm beautiful?" She walked away, leaving him pale and shaking. That was when the rumors began. Gina. The girl with the stitched face. Gina. The freak. Gina. The psycho. I hated how fast people turned on her. By lunchtime the next day, everyone knew her name, and nobody wanted to sit near her. When I saw her eating alone, I decided to talk to her. "Hey," I said gently, "you settling in okay?" She looked shocked, like she wasn't used to someone speaking to her like she mattered. Yes, I'm fine," she whispered. Before I could say more, Marcus shouted across the cafeteria, "Hey, Stitch Face, how's the sewing club?" The whole lunchroom laughed. I felt something in me snap. "Guys, not cool," I said. "Cut it out." But Marcus wasn't listening. Talia, another one of our friends, chimed in too. "Seriously, she looks like her surgeon failed medical school." Gina's eyes filled with hurt. She stood quietly and walked away. Later that day, I went to the pool to clear my head. Underwater, everything was peaceful, silent, until I felt someone watching me. I looked up. Gina was floating upside down above the water, staring at me, not moving, not blinking. I panicked, inhaled water, and burst to the surface coughing. She apologized, saying she thought I had frozen underwater. I tried to calm down and told her she just startled me. Then she asked the question I was dreading. "It's my face, isn't it? I scared you." "No, I'm not like them. I know you're just dealing with something." She stared at me long enough to make my skin crawl. "Something like that," she whispered. Marcus and Talia entered then. They immediately started mocking her. Gina walked toward Talia, leaned close, and whispered, "Maybe I should cut off your face and wear it like a mask. What do you think?" Talia shoved her into the water. The next morning, a scream erupted from the hallway. We ran to the girls' washroom and froze at the doorway. Talia was on the floor,
twisted unnaturally, and sitting beside her was Gina. Her stitched face was gone, because she was wearing Talia's. A paper knife in her hand, blood dripping. Am I pretty now? Tell me. Talia died on the way to the hospital. Gina was taken to a mental institution. They say she hasn't been seen since, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I hear water dripping outside my window.
Story 6. The Headmaster Who Hunts at Night. I crushed my cigarette on the gravel and stared up at the massive boarding school. The whole place looked like a prison. Giant iron gates, tall stone walls, windows so dark you couldn't see inside. I didn't want to be here, but I didn't have a choice. After years of stealing, fighting, and hanging around the wrong people, my parents were done. When I broke into a neighbor's house and pawned his TV for booze money, that was the last straw. They signed me up for a strict rehabilitation boarding school. The gates creaked open, and the headmaster stepped out. He was huge, towering. His face was crooked, one eye lower than the other, his nose long and hooked, his hair dirty blonde and patchy. Everything about him looked wrong. "Dawson?" he asked. "Yes," I muttered. "You will address me as sir at all times." "Yes, sir." His presence alone felt like a threat. That first night, I tried to sleep, but in the middle of the night, screams echoed down the hallway, sharp, terrified, someone being hurt. I sat up, frozen. Before I could get out of bed to check, a hand landed on my shoulder. My roommate. "Don't," he whispered. "Going out at night gets you punished." "What kind of punishment?" I asked. He didn't answer. The next night, the screams came again, louder this time. I had to know. I opened the door, stepping into the dark hallway. The air felt colder, heavier. The screaming led me to a classroom at the end of the corridor. Inside, I saw a shadowy figure, tall, with something long in his hand. He raised his arm. It came down with a crack. Someone whimpered. I realized he was whipping someone, but from where I stood, I couldn't see who. I stepped back, trying to leave quietly, and the figure turned around. It was the headmaster. "Well, well," he said. "You really shouldn't be out here, Dawson." I ran, but a teacher grabbed me from behind. "You're going to get what you deserve," he hissed. They dragged me to a janitor's closet and locked me inside. "I'll be back soon," the headmaster said. "And when I return, you'll wish you stayed in bed." Hours passed, or maybe it was minutes. My brain wouldn't stop racing. Finally, I remembered something. I used to pick locks. My hands shook, but I managed to crack the door open. I sprinted across the hallway, out the back exit, climbed the fence, and ran into the woods. Behind me, flashlights flickered through the trees. "Find him!" a teacher yelled. I didn't stop running until I reached the road. I hid in a ditch, then flagged down the first car I saw and begged for a ride home. When I told my parents everything, they were horrified. They called the school, demanded answers, and eventually broke the contract. For a moment, I thought I was safe. But then, a few days later, as I walked to my new school, a white van slowed beside me. The door slid open. Men in masks jumped out holding bats. "Get back here, boy," one yelled. I ran. They didn't catch me. Not that day. But I know they'll be back. The headmaster doesn't want me telling anyone what I saw.
I don't know how long I have before he finds me again. If you made it to the end, congratulations. Most people don't. Not because the stories are too long, but because they're too real. And once your mind starts imagining what else might be out there, it becomes a lot harder to keep watching with the lights off. But remember something. Every mystery we talk about here, every disappearance, every shadow in the corner of someone's vision, none of them have answers. Not yet. And that means the same thing could happen anywhere, even to you, even tonight. If you felt someone watching you at any point during this video, don't worry, that happens to a lot of viewers. Just make sure you check behind you before you go to sleep. If you want more stories like these, darker, stranger, and even more unexplained, make sure to subscribe, hit the bell, and leave a comment telling me which moment tonight creeped you out the most. Until next time, stay safe, stay alert, and whatever you do, don't turn around.